Have you ever looked at what influences you in your life? Not what inspires you, but what has a direct impact that shapes your life? Well, today we're going to dive deep into this topic of doing basically an audit on all the influences that are happening in your life. Welcome to Influence. My name is Vaillancourt, and I'm your friend, your fellow traveler companion in your search for authentic influence that has a positive impact in your life and those in it. Now, if this is your first time listening, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it with somebody who would benefit from this message today. Now, this whole episode started from the idea of country music. Now, it's one of my guilty pleasures to listen to country music, and whatever you deem to be country music these days could be interpretive. I'm from like the 90s country era. Okay, so you got Brooks and Dunn, you got Garth Brooks, you've got all these 90s superstars that I want to list in case you've never heard of 90s country music. But it's not just about country music. But for me, it was like, at some point in time, I was looking at what I was listening to and all the influences in my life. And country music and any kind of genre of music can always go into conversations that end up being a little bit toxic. And think about how many times you're listening to a track or a song or an album, whatever you want to call it, okay? You're listening to this. It's getting repeated in your brain. Sometimes you get so good at it that you can actually recite the lyrics yourself. So if it's saying something like, there was a song by another artist called Tim McGraw, good-looking guy from the 90s. He had this song called The Cowboy and Me, and it went along the lines of, he doesn't know why he acts the way he does, like he doesn't have anything to lose, but I guess that's just the cowboy in me. And that was like one of my favorite songs. And then there's all these songs about love loss and I just can't get it right and she left me and I'll never be good enough. Think about that conversation happening, right? In your head, you're consistently repeating this to yourself. You're singing along with a smile on your face or potentially tears in your eyes, depending on what's happening. And it makes you feel connected. It makes you feel heard and understood. So I think that the power of music is the ability to hear something or hear something communicated that you're not able to articulate yourself and to give you a voice. So it's not to say that you shouldn't be listening to music. I just think that you need to start to look at what music you're actually listening to and what impact it's having. Because I recently heard on a podcast, I think it was actually on Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about problems. And the more you talk about a problem, the more you attract problems, the more you magnify it, you give it energy, because that's your focus. Your brain's just focused on the problem. So it's okay, first off, to be aware of something. So I think country music, for at least my experience, was an awareness factor. It gave me a voice. It made me feel heard, understood. It made me feel like somebody understood me. And that's the power of music. But from there, it's like, well, if I keep repeating this conversation to myself about that I never get it right, I'm always going to lose the girl, my life's in shambles, that's going to continue to happen in my life. It's going to be a perpetual cycle that I'm going to continue to see. So for me, I still listen to music, but I also now listen to more uplifting, positive messaging that I get usually from like podcasts. And I pick my podcasts very wisely as well. But I just encourage you to sit down for like the next week. And we're going to talk about the 3 steps that you can take to do the influence audit later on. But really unpack, like, what are you listening to? What are you repeating to yourself? What are your kids listening to? And I know this can kind of seem like overindulging in making sure to block out all the negatives. And it's not really about that. It's just making sure that you're balancing the equation a little bit. So for me, I can't listen to country music as much as I'd like to. I also love singing and playing guitar. But even that was like, I'm singing these songs now and I'm embodying them. And yeah, I'm able to give maybe some other people that opportunity to feel heard or feel communicated, or they love that song. So it's a gift that I can impart in the world, and that music imparts in the world to like millions and billions of people. But ultimately, I think that it's like almost a form of brainwashing at some point. Not that that's the intention of it, but like you're repeating this phrase to yourself. So the other thing next is television. Okay, now TV's evolved. Like I don't think people really call it TV, but it's like either Netflix or Crave or streaming or Amazon Prime, whatever you're doing, same thing, right? We're watching these shows. And listen, I love indulging just like the next person. So don't feel like I'm judging anybody here. I'm just entertaining ideas beyond what the normal reality looks like for the average person who's watching like 7-8 hours of TV. For me, I don't really watch TV because I had to cut it out. For me, it wasn't an influence that was having a positive impact on my life for many reasons. One of those reasons was like, if I'm spending 9 to 10 hours watching TV, I'm not spending it with my family. I'm not spending it sleeping. I'm not spending it working out or bettering myself in some way. And I'm not getting to the next level that I want to get to in my life. And I enjoy my life. I'm not like dissatisfied because I'm not at the quote unquote next level, but I realized that like it wasn't bringing me closer, and I had to start limiting it. So again, similar to country music or music in general, I still listen to it, but it's not like always on in the background anymore the way it used to be. And I'm kind of switching it up. So for TV, I just do an audit. Like, how much TV are you watching, or how much mindless watching of reels on social media or YouTube videos that have nothing to do with like leveling up your mind or like who you are as a person in personal development, or just something that's basically bringing you closer to where you want to be and further away from the person you don't want to be. And the other thing that TV kind of creates is kind of this illusion, right? Like, we all want to achieve something in our life. Most of us will define a set of goals, a set of objectives that we want to accomplish. Well, the timeline for those objectives could take years. So now think about when you're watching TV and something gets wrapped up in 30 minutes or maybe 40 minutes, or if you're watching a movie, it's like a 2-hour time span. That's still a significantly small time span of like everything happening within that cycle of time that is nowhere near relevant in real life. So your brain associates this. And I'm not a scientific advisor. I'm not a doctor here telling you that this is exactly how the brain operates. But I mean, the writing's on the wall. The more we condition ourselves to think that that's the expectation, and this applies to more than just TV, of course. This applies to relationships and anything else that you have going on in your life, that you're basically creating this logic that isn't logical. It's not the truth. So for me, I was like, same thing, whether it's violence, whether it's, some sort of like rom-com or something that is just not attainable by the average person out there, especially in that timeline, your brain then searches for that. And in my mind, it's kind of like inhibiting you from wanting to chase those longer term goals because that self-gratification isn't in there. So again, don't stop watching TV if you enjoy TV and it's one of your little pastimes. It's one of my guilty pleasures as well. I love watching a movie on planes because sometimes that's the only thing you can do. And if I get tired of an audiobook, I switch it up. But I just encourage you to watch how you're spending your time. And if it's not, at a good balance, just maybe challenge that. Like, what can you cut out, or what else would you fill that time with if you had that time back? The third one for me is advertising, marketing, and the news. Okay. So talk about problems. You just watch the news for a little bit and you're bombarded with problems. But I've been a marketer for over 15 years now. And I'm not the top marketer out there, but I'm a fan of marketing. I really love to unpack why it's effective. I like hearing some ads sometimes just from an educational standpoint. Not to say I like hearing ads, but I like to learn from it, what's happening, what's a new trend, all those things, because that's my profession. That's what I'm doing in my quote unquote career. And that's the way my businesses make money. So advertising, marketing, and the news are all choices. And when I say choices, I mean, when you listen to Spotify, you have a choice to pay a membership fee or not. Now, if you don't pay a membership fee, you're going to save money, but ultimately now you're going to be exposed to a bunch of different ads. And those ads are going to sell you on things. And those ads are going to influence you. And you can't protect it. So even though sometimes the show or the podcast might have baked in ads where it's the host read ad and it's something that they truly endorse and believe in which case it might be a good influence for you. On the flip side of that, there's dynamic ads that get inserted into shows based on where you live in the world, what your interests are, and they're very targeted, and they're designed to basically create fear, designed to sell, and designed to retain you in their system. And you don't have control over that. And for me, that's an influence that I don't want in my life. So I chose, instead of investing in products that I'm going to be sent through advertising that I might buy just by impulse because, hey, I heard that ad and I want to buy that thing now, I may or may not need it, I chose to invest in actually having a paid subscription so I don't get those ads if I don't want to hear ads anymore. So I encourage you, where are ads showing up in your life? And what investment is it going to cost you to get those out of your life, and so that they're not influencing you in a potential negative way? Now, if you like ads and you're a shopper and you want to get all these new ads coming to you, then maybe that's not for you. But for me, the investment of getting a paid subscription for things outweighs not getting it and being just, again, completely obliterated with advertising and marketing. Now, I am a bit of a jaded marketer. I am tired of advertising. I'm tired of commercials. I don't want to ever see them again. The other day, I was actually watching a satellite TV at a hunt camp because we didn't have Netflix. And I saw commercials for the first time in like years. And I was like, is this what people watch between like parts of shows? Like, are we serious? Are we still doing this? And it's still working because these companies are investing billions of dollars. I don't know how they're getting away with it. But the more we can turn that off, the less budgets they have to put back into it. So, at some point, not that I want advertising to go away because this is a big form of revenue for the businesses we run. I think ethical marketing is the way of the future. And the way to mitigate unethical marketing is to stop buying the things that aren't a direct good influence in your life or those of others, that don't stand for great missions and core values, etc. So the other thing too is, again, talking about the problem. You think about when you watch commercials or what you choose to watch in advertisements or TV, and you think about political shows or news shows, and their whole thing is to just propagate fear. And the reason why they're doing that is because fear definitely sells more than everything's fine, just go back to living your life. And the more you start watching these shows, the more you start watching fear-based things to keep up with the times, the more that's in your psyche, the more that's in your brain, that's in your conversation, that's what you're talking about, that's what you're focused on. So for me, I don't watch the news, I don't get involved in politics. Some people might disagree with that, and I welcome the disagreement and the challenge on that. But for me, it just wasn't adding value to my life. And when I was paying attention to it, nothing necessarily was changing. So I still choose to seek out things that I'm interested in, that I want to support, whether it's a cause or whether it's a fundraiser or a charity. But I don't want to be controlled by the narrative that's happening from some of the bigger spenders that are then overtaking some of the news outlets. I don't know how it all works, but it just has that feel to it, right? It feels like they're just there. It's always bad. There's nothing really good happening in the news. So I've cut that out. So here are my 3 steps that I recommend doing. And this is something that doesn't take a long time. It just takes 7 days. It's basically a 7-day influence audit that I'd like you to do. I'm going to continue to do this myself. So, next time on this episode, I'm actually going to recap my influences as I see them. I think I've got a pretty good handle on it, but I'm always willing to challenge what I think I've got a handle on to see if there's room for improvement or things that I'd like to change. So number 1, do an audit on what influences you, what do you allow in your life, and approximately how much time for each one. So how much time are you on social media? How much time are you watching Netflix? How much time are you doing anything, where there's an influence coming into your life that may be good or may be bad? You don't just want to measure the bad stuff. You want to see what also you consider as good. Number 2, be aware of how you felt while being influenced from that source, whether it's good or bad, okay? And or would you gain from not being influenced if it's a source that doesn't serve you? So consider, like, when you're watching the news or after you watch Netflix, how do you feel? Maybe you feel good. Maybe it's a good episode and you enjoyed it. Maybe you're like, oh man, I can't believe I just binge watched 4 hours of Netflix. That's an indication that there's probably an issue there. So in the influence audit, you want to take note of that. How does it make you feel in those moments? And then if there are positive things too, again, how good did you feel? And you want more of that, because if you want more of that, when you don't feel good doing something, know what the feeling is on the opposite end when you do feel good in the really positive influence factors in your life. Number 3, just find new influences in your life, right? That demonstrate the values, the vision, or the reality that you want to have, and make habits to have them in your life. So for me, one thing that I started to do when I couldn't listen to music anymore was I listened to instrumentals. I actually started to listen to some gospel music. Even though I'm not religiously based, I'm spiritually based. I found it very uplifting and positive, especially around my kids. I also, again, instrumental music was good. Meditation music, same thing. It's just got these energy vibes to it. But I continued to search for things beyond music. I look for audiobooks. I love listening to audiobooks now when I'm doing dishes, when I'm walking outside, when I'm cutting the grass. So I've kind of habit stacked. And I think James Clear has the book Atomic Habits, which was a great book in terms of like when you're doing something like dishes, you could also do, maybe a couple push-ups between dishes, or you could also listen to an audiobook or something that basically is habit stacking the positive influence in your life. Now, he goes into a bunch deeper criteria and content in that, so I'm not doing it justice. But basically, audiobooks for me were a big thing because I didn't have time to actually read a book. So I just get an AirPod, put it in, book, and here we go. Listen to 1.5x speed, bookmark things as emerge that I want to return to or I want to write down. But just find new influences in your life. And those are the 3 steps. So this week, I challenge you, okay, take the 7-day challenge, do an audit, have a piece of paper ready or a little binder beside you or just on your cell phone. What are you doing each day when you're being influenced? And it could also be at work. Like if you're at work for 8 hours a day and you're being influenced, and it has a negative effect, like you have a pit of your stomach, like this sucks. That's a negative influence, okay? So you want to consider like how much time you're spending there and where those deltas are, those high peaks of like things you shouldn't be doing that don't feel good. Those are the ones you want to start to really tackle first. And then focus on, well, how could I read more or do other influences of positive things, whatever that be. It could be a sport. It doesn't have to be always personal development. It could be something fun. Fun is okay. You don't always have to be doing critical things and working on yourself and, striving. I think it's important that we also let our minds wander, let it be free, taking walks in nature. But it's really important that you consider this. Awareness is always the first step. Action is the second step. And third is always consistency with both action steps in the first two. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to hit subscribe button, hit the like button on YouTube if you're there, whatever platform you're on, thank you for listening, and share with a friend if you think you get some value out of this. As always, continue challenging your assumptions to shape your new reality and choose your influences wisely. We'll see you on the next episode.